It looks like member Ferguson's connection has been lost, so we're just waiting for him to join back and then we can get started.
It's all great when it works.
You're right.
Seeing as how it could be my second last meeting, I'm actually wearing a shirt.
Morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Rushed. Sorry.
Morning.
It's okay.
Morning.
We didn't have quorum, so we're just waiting for member Ferguson to try and join again.
Okay.
And we'll get started.
Okay. This meeting.
I haven't heard back from member Ferguson, so I'm thinking we should maybe get started and then hopefully he joins back.
Sure.
So being the first meeting of the year, I'll call the meeting to order. So it's 9:07. We need a confirmation of the agenda as amended to include the election of the chair and vice chair. If I could get a mover and seconder for that, please.
I think Jim's coming back.
Perfect. Member DeBreen, are you okay to second that motion? So just looking for
Morning, Jim.
Morning.
so I'm just looking for a nomination for the appointment of the chair. The resolution would read, be it resolved that the board appoint blank as chair of the police service board for the 2024 year. Are there any nominations? Member Milne?
I'd like to nominate Jim Ferguson.
I'll go Brian.
Is there a seconder for that? Jim, are you okay with that, or would you prefer to not?
I'd prefer to go Brian. He's good at it.
Yes, he is.
You don't get good at it. You don't get good at it, Jim, if you don't do it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of things.
Is there a seconder for the motion of member Milne?
I'll second.
Are you okay to accept that, member Milne?
Sure. Thank you.
I will pass the meeting over to you then.
Thank you.
Yeah, if we can just do an election of the vice chair, that would be
okay.
Great.
Thanks, Holly. Do you want me to do that election, or are you gonna? Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a nomination for vice chair?
I'll go Al.
All right.
Alan.
Guess it's the same.
You'll have to
last year.
second that. You're okay to second that, Al?
Yeah, I am. No problem.
All right. You're okay to let your name stand?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All in favor? Al's it. He's the vice chair. Thanks, Al. Okay,
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, for as long as it lasts, this might be the second last meeting.
it might be. That's right. That's right. All right,
Yeah.
thanks, Al, and thank you, Holly, for starting off there. Now I have to admit I haven't got the agenda in front of me, but I'm presuming that we will ask, is there any pecuniary interest related to any item on today's agenda? Not seeing any. I'll if one should arise during the course of the meeting, you can declare it at that time. Now I was talking to Inspector Richardson on the way up here. He's he's a little behind too, because as he said, people just will not stay out of the ditch this morning. He's not in the ditch. He made that clear, but well, he might be by now. I don't know. He said he'd join us as soon as he could. So, Holly, our first item, I think, is the inspector's report.
No, so we do need an adoption of the minutes
Oh,
from
sorry.
the
That's right.
19th of December.
Thank you. Would someone care to move the adoption of those minutes, please? Jim, seconded by Alan. Thank you.
Alan, yes.
Any discussion around those minutes? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Through the chair, the next item is actually a staff report, so I can get started with that
Excellent.
if that's fine.
Would someone care to move that report so we get it on the floor? Al? And Jim will second. Okay, Holly, thank you. It's your report, right?
Yep.
Yep, very good. Carry on. Thank you.
Thanks. So we just wanted to provide an update to the Police Services Board about the new Community Safety and Policing Act and the joint board with Grey County. The province has put a date to begin on April 1st. So the county clerks and staff have met collaboratively, like Grey and Bruce County, to kind of come up with a timeline of what we are anticipating so that we'll be ready to go for the April 1st meeting. It is all laid out in the report, so I can take questions if there's any, but we just wanted to provide an update to the boards. And then the same report will be going to our council on the 7th of February.
Sorry, Holly, I just want to jump in here for a second. I just got a text from Inspector Richardson. He has an agenda, but not a link to the meeting. Oh, you got that as well? Or...
Yeah, I'm sending it right now.
Excellent. Thank you. So, any questions related to that report? Comments? So, Holly, that motion then will come to, or that same report will come to council through this committee for an appointment of a council member to the new Community Safety Board.
Yeah.
Or whatever we're calling it.
That's correct. And then that person will also sit on the ad hoc committee for appointing the community members. So
Right.
There's 4 members in total for all of the, like for the region.
Right. And I wasn't entirely clear, the provincial appointees, will they need to reapply? Is that how this is going to work?
So there's not a lot of information that's been given out about provincial appointees. There is a process and an email had been sent out from the province. So there will be, I believe, essentially you're reapplying, but it's not quite the rigorous process as before.
Okay, good. Any further questions, discussion?
No.
Okay, all those in favor of receiving that report?
Alan.
Thank you. Now we're on to the inspector's report. Okay, he just said he got the link. So we'll maybe just wait a minute for him to connect. Just thinking about that last motion, Holly, should we have had a motion to forward that to the council or no?
So the motion reads that that's received for information that the Township of Southgate Police Services Board support the timeline outlined in the report, which we discussed,
Okay.
and that the Township of Southgate recommend that council appoint one member to represent the Township of Southgate on the Gravers Detachment Joint Board. So I'll just
Excellent.
provide an update to council and how that report goes.
Excellent. Thank you, Holly. Where are you at today, Jim? Surely you're not hauling gravel today, are you?
No, over Jamestown, heading to big poultry farm.
Ah, okay. Morning, Paul.
Good morning. My apologies, everybody, but as I shared with his worship this morning, people can't seem to stay out of the ditch. So it took a little longer to get to the office than it normally does.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right. So we have actually started the meeting. I've been elected chair. Al is the deputy chair, or vice chair, and we've done the staff report. So now we're right up to your report. So if you're good to go, we can carry on from there, if that's all right.
Well, fortunately, I have prepared prior than this morning and reviewed the report. I'm just trying to get to it in the agenda so we can follow along here. The report you're going to get today is an almost full year-end report, but not quite. There's still some stats we're waiting to pull through. I have Constable McNeil with me, who helps develop the reports, and she's always good to help with questions. So
Okay.
I'm just getting through to the report now. Just off the top of my head, I will say there's been a fairly significant increase in calls for service in Southgate. It's not unusual to the rest of the area. There's only one municipality of the 9 that has a reduction in calls for service, and that reduction is very minimal. We're just seeing the consistency with the increase in population with the associated increase in calls for service. So it is my pleasure to present this report and talk about some of the work that's gone on in your community and within the Grey Bruce Detachment area. Traffic-wise, we've had a fairly successful year with a reduction in marine fatalities and a reduction in road fatalities, an increase in contacts, an increase in rides. And there's no secret that the correlation between the increase in enforcement activities and contact activities reduces fatal motor vehicle collisions. Our street crime unit and crime unit's been very busy with major investigations. A number of, unfortunately, homicides in our area from the past and the present that they continue to follow up on. But I'll go through it step by step. And I don't know if I've said in the past, but as we go through the report, I always welcome questions or concerns as we go through the information. I have no issue with being interrupted at all. I actually prefer it that way as we're dealing with the subject itself. So,
all right.
I'll start with our crime unit. So a benchmark occurrence is basically our language for a serious occurrence or something that engages the services of the crime unit. We've had 265 in 2023, 98 death investigations, including some that are opioid related, 39 reported sexual assaults, 3 indecent acts, 2 child pornography frauds, including cryptocurrency arson, various armed robberies, assaults, and criminal harassment. So all of your serious crimes are dealt with by our crime unit. They have helped with the 3 homicides that occurred in Owen Sound by providing some oversight and investigative resources to assist Owen Sound through any municipality that experiences 3 homicides in close proximity to one another. It is in a significant strain on resources. So as we do for any of our policing partners, we supplied some resources and some investigative oversight to help with those investigations. It's interesting, there's some crossover between traffic and crime in this report, whereby we had one occurrence that was treated death investigation in relation to a vehicle interaction that was a crossover between a traffic investigation and a criminal investigation just by the nature of it. And eventually dangerous driving causing death charges were laid by our current crime unit, but it was a fairly complex investigation. We continue to prepare for, and when you have an investigation that's as complex as a homicide, it's one thing to do the investigation and lay the charge, but after the charge is laid, there's a significant amount of effort that goes into preparing and presenting the case for trial. And then when that case comes to trial, preparing our officers and working with the Crown to have a successful prosecution. So the work is not done when the charge is laid, and our crime unit has been following up on a number of historical homicides in that they've happened previously and preparing for trial. A lot of those have come, due to their hard work, have come to conclusion and come to conclusion successfully. So they've had a very busy year, and we don't anticipate that the pace is going to let off for them. When our calls for service continue to increase, so does the work for our crime unit. Our street crime unit has had a very successful year, pardon me, in that they've balanced their priorities between drug investigations and very serious drug investigations. You see some photos here of some recovery of drugs from a warrant. It's important to recognize that when those drugs are recovered and seized, it quite literally equates to saving lives. In this day and age of opioid overdoses or overdoses leading to deaths, any illicit drugs that we can take off the street quite literally saves lives. In addition to that, you can see that there were some very complex property investigations where they've seized vehicles and snowmobiles, firearms related to drugs. They've even assisted other agencies with a warrant in relation to the manufacturing of firearms. So there's a process by which now that crime guns are being made through a process that I don't want to educate people too much about, just in case somebody gets some clever ideas. But there is a process to manufacture the frame for a firearm and then import the rest of the parts necessary to make it a firearm. And our unit helped in the investigation of that and dismantling that operation. It's been a very successful year for them. And I don't anticipate that next year will be any different. We have had an influx of newer officers into that unit, and they're getting up to speed with training and expertise, and we'll see the benefit of that coming forward.
Well,
Our mobile crisis team.
Paul,
Yeah,
if I could
go
just
ahead.
jump in there for a second.
Absolutely.
You talk about the increased calls for service in Southgate and various other municipalities and the amount of work that goes into the various investigations. What is there? How do I phrase this?
How are we keeping pace?
Well, how do we, or what trips the matrix to need more officers, shall I say, for the detachment? Like, are we getting close to more officers? Because I'm sure there's a matrix that, or a formula that is determines how many officers you actually have on the ground.
That's a great question, Your Worship, and thank you for it. There is a process underway now through some additional government funding, and as a result of I take it back to the Auditor General's report on policing and proactive policing and things of that nature. For a long time in policing, we focused on the calls for service and attaching everything to a call for service. And in that process, some of our proactive activities in our community engagement was not where we wanted it to be. So as a result of and we appreciate the Auditor General's report because it's identified some areas for improvement. And through that report, internally, they are looking at each detachment across the province to determine what their needs are. And through that process, Grey Bruce will see an increase in staffing to complement the increased calls for service.
Very good.
Now,
Thanks.
I think it's important to manage expectations in the sense that it takes some time to hire, train, process officers, and get boots on the ground. And there's sort of a saying within policing that it takes about 5 years to be fully effective as a police officer. But we will see some increased resourcing. And in the meantime, we have engaged the major event tool, and we bring police officers from across the province to support us here, as the organization does recognize that there's some increased pressure here, and particularly in the summer.
Very good.
So I hope that speaks to your question,
Yep.
Your Worship.
Thank you very much.
So moving on to our MCERT program, that was a relatively new program, but is getting older by the day, and we're thrilled to have it. As you can see, it continues to be a huge success. The live calls and the interaction of our MCERT team has led to a significant reduction in not only calls for service, recidivism amongst those who need those services. It's reduced emergency room visits, which allows our medical professionals to focus on medical emergencies. We did apply for some funding. Actually, I will say we applied for grant funding for both MCERT and to support our street crime unit, and we were not successful in either of those applications. We will look at why we weren't successful and hopefully learn from that and remain undaunted and continue to seek additional funding to support those programs. We're also looking at our partnership with what is now Bright Shores Health Services and ways we can enhance that program and put more boots on the ground. We see the huge value in that program. We spoke briefly in the last meeting about our provincial liaison team and the efforts that team brings to bear. Just as a bit of a highlight, our provincial liaison team is designed to establish relationships in our communities in the good times. So if things become difficult, they have those relationships, and it can resolve issues before they become issues. It particularly focuses on our First Nations communities, but we've used them in other communities for bylaw disputes or potential disruptions. They can be used for labor disruptions. They can be used for, I'll go back to my Wellington days. We had some protests of farm activities, and they were used to increase the communication so it didn't cause disruption on either side. So we have decided within Grey Bruce to create our own position internally that supports the entire provincial program, and we've seen some significant value in that. So for example, in Southgate, if you had a bylaw dispute that was difficult to solve, or some sort of property dispute that was long-term and difficult to solve, this unit would go in and just bridge that communication amongst all sides, almost like mediation, if you will. And they're very adept at bringing a peaceful resolution to situations that in the past may have required uniform involvement, and with this unit, quite often it mitigates that need. Our media folk, Krista Linthorne, is doing a very, very good job with the media. You can see here in the report, there's a picture of the Aurora Borealis, and that one picture was spread significantly across the province, shared and viewed by many. We also hope it attracts, maybe we talked about bringing more staff to the area. We're hoping kind of those pictures and the introduction to what we have to offer here in Grey Bruce attracts more people to the area, more officers. So she continues to do an excellent job with being the single person in the detachment and bridging the need between media, community engagement, and school. She's bridging all three of those things. Our auxiliary program, I've bragged about them ad nauseum. I'm sure you're so much so that you're tired of hearing, but they continue to do an incredible job. We're blessed by our auxiliary program, long-term dedicated members with no remuneration for what they do, continue to dedicate significant hours. And you'll see them at a lot of our public events. They're distinguished by their light blue uniforms. Our summer program, I'm pleased to advise that we've just added, Your Worship, we talked about additional resources. We've just added an additional sergeant position full-time to Grey Bruce. So that position will be responsible full-time for summer programming, but also addressing needs throughout the area. With 4 reporting locations and cruisers and equipment at all those locations, the current support sergeant had upwards of 20 direct reports. So we're spreading those direct reports across 2 sergeants now. And I can tell you the person that's in that position is very happy to have a partner now. So but the organization is recognizing that need for additional resources and supporting that. The Marine program we've talked about. We will look at that program again and look at ways to enhance it, but we still are pretty thrilled with the success we had last summer. Into the statistics, you can look overall, there's a steady increase in calls for service across Grey Bruce and within Southgate particularly. You see there that there's been an 8% year over year and 29% increase over the last 5 years in Grey Bruce. And then Southgate has increased by 13% since 2022 and 78% since 2019. I would say there's a direct correlation to the development in Southgate, particularly the south end of the area, that leads to that increase in calls for service. I've said it before and I'll say it again, more people, more calls. It's just, it's tried and true, it never changes. Property crime, there's actually been no statistical anomaly there, a bit of a decrease compared to last year, but overall, I would say it's fairly neutral. Drug investigations, we've talked about before. It only shows one, but the investigation could have commenced in the municipality next door and gone into your municipality. It's just where that occurrence generated. I can assure you that significant investigation is going on to drug trafficking in our communities every day. Criminal traffic, obviously you can see that we're fortunate that Southgate is a bit neutral comparatively to the calls for service. We watch that fairly significantly because traffic is the one thing that spreads across all of our borders. And it's the one thing that truly affects all of our residents. And as I go from meeting to meeting across the detachment area, it's consistently the issue that comes up the most. Everybody in rural Ontario drives, everybody in rural Ontario is affected by traffic. So where we can't be everywhere all the time, we make a significant effort to be in the right place at the right time, using our analytics, using historical data in terms of where the crashes have occurred, severity of crashes, traffic complaints, and all of those things to deploy resources effectively. Our traffic management unit, it's a 2-member unit, they've had a very successful year. They've partnered with MTO and other police services across the area and done some traffic blitz along with ride programs and just daily speed enforcement. So if Southgate had a traffic complaint, we would go put up speed measuring devices to determine if there is an issue of perception or an issue of actual speeding. If it's an issue of speeding, then those devices tell us when to put the members there. Then these members, along with our general service members, will go at those times of day when they're assigned to do so and provide traffic enforcement. We're seeing a lot of success in that. We've seen it in the reduction of collisions and the severity of collisions.
I just could jump in there and thank you, Inspector Richardson, for the additional attention to the west end of the township. I've had positive comments from residents. They like to see the cruiser there. They like to see the speed enforcement. Of course, the customers that you've had aren't as pleased, but nonetheless, it's been good. And I actually stopped one day. I didn't get the name of the officer, but I stopped one day and thanked him for his efforts. He wasn't busy at the moment, but I did stop and say hello. And so thank you very much for that. It's been noticed. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Your Worship. And that's an example of where we've used all of those things coming together, determining that there's a need to have enforcement in that area and then putting the enforcement in place. And it's people will see a cruiser once and then they'll remember for the next 4 weeks that they saw a cruiser there. So sometimes that's all it takes. And the other thing I should mention is...
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we've historically, because I'm an old guy, we didn't really track warnings. We only tracked the enforcement efforts themselves. And within the last few years, we started tracking warnings as well. So we have the capacity to issue a warning, which sometimes can have as much effect as a charge. And then our system will tell us if that person has been warned before, what they've been warned for, and where they were warned. So if they're stopped in the same place, it guides our officers to consider enforcement measures the next time.
Right. Well, I was just going to ask and maybe make the point when speed enforcement is being done and the officer is roadside, I had somebody make a point to me that sometimes it's more effective to have a black and white vehicle as opposed to what people call the ghost vehicle, because people see that vehicle a lot. It's a lot more visible than a ghost vehicle. So, just, do you have any thoughts on that, or?
So we have a variety of different types of vehicles in our fleet. Our traffic unit, we do have subdued vehicles. So with markings or subdued markings, you always get the people who will flash lights and give indications as to where we are and sort of try and thwart our efforts at traffic enforcement. And that's really sort of the genesis behind the design of those vehicles. What I'll what I'll say is I appreciate those that flash lights, because sometimes we're not there and they're slowing everybody down for us. But we do
Fair
run a
point.
combination, so you should see a bit of both. The traffic unit does use subdued vehicles, and it's for a specific purpose.
Very good.
That
Thank you.
too can have a psychological effect where they see that vehicle that doesn't look much like a cruiser, and then for the next little while, everything coming at them, they don't know if it's a police car or not. So
Fair enough.
although we don't want to trick the public, and that's not our idea, we just like to have different options to employ our trade, if you will.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
And then lastly, just as I always mention, we are always looking for good people, whether it be a cadet, an auxiliary, frontline constable. If in your conversations about policing, you recognize somebody who you think would be a good candidate for the OPP, I encourage you to send them my way, and we will give them the information they need to decide whether the career is for them and give them some support in coming over to policing. So
Very good.
And other than that, that's all I have, subject to any questions, of course.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Are there any questions? Al, Jim?
No, I think.
No, everybody's happy. Well, that's good. One further question I had was, here at Grey County, we had a delegation to County Council about speed enforcement and road safety and so on and so forth. And one of the things they said was that fatalities, traffic fatalities, in Grey Bruce is amongst the highest in Ontario. I was a little taken aback with that, but I couldn't challenge the speaker because I didn't have any data in front of me. But is that something that you would say is a fair statement, or is wildly partisan, so to speak?
Well, I have my trusty statistician with me, and what I can say is, and I look to her to correct me, but consistently for 2 years in a row, we had 13 fatal motor vehicle collisions back to back. And this year we had 4. In 2023, we had 4, so a significant reduction.
Absolutely.
I don't think that we are unique to any other community. One fatal collision, I will say, is too many. Anybody dying on our roads is too many. But I would say, based on my my knowledge of the areas around us, what I can't speak to is maybe the West Grey area. I'm not sure how many crashes West Grey has, although we provide technical resources to assist them in those investigations. They don't count as collisions in our area. But I would say that we're not unique compared to anywhere else in the province.
Okay. No,
Do you agree with that, Alexis?
There was a spike in fatal collisions in the time around COVID, and that was a provincial trend. There was a large increase during that period, but the decrease from the 5-year average until last year was over 50% in Grey Bruce. So we've corrected from the spike we saw during 20, 21, and 22.
So the 4 fatalities would be more the norm as opposed to the spike that you saw during the pandemic.
Absolutely. And now you can see why I surround myself with good people.
I do the same thing. It makes me look good. All right, that's good. That's good. So I'll ask final time. Any further questions? Holly, go ahead.
Not a question. We just need a mover and seconder to receive for information.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. Jim will move, Alan seconds. All those in favor to receive the report? That is carried. Holly, is there any other business? Please.
Yep, through the chair. There's 2 items of correspondence: the Crime Stoppers of Grey Bruce Corner report and the 2024 Tipster magazine, I think they call it.
Okay.
So those are the only 2 items for correspondence.
Okay, I'll take a motion to receive the correspondence. Moved by Al, second by Jim. Any questions or discussion around the correspondence? Not seeing any. All those in favor to receive it? That is carried. Anything else, Holly?
New business, new or unfinished business?
Is there any new or unfinished business? Don't see any. Final motion?
Members privilege first.
Oh, members privilege. Yes, the most important part of the meeting. Does anybody have any news or no? Well, again, just I just want to thank Inspector Richardson. Thank you for all your efforts to keep us safe here in Southgate. I know the vast majority of our residents do appreciate all the efforts of the OPP.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll pass that to the members.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thank you also.
Very good. One more motion to adjourn. Al, second by Jim. All those in favor? That is carried. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. And thank you, Constable McNeil, for your participation as well.